description. We'll check it out. And what else? Of course, the top headline news that we're going to start with is Tamara Lich and Chris Barber's trial has started, and Tamara Lich got permission to be out in downtown Ottawa by herself, triggering all sorts of people in Ottawa who say that Tamara Lich's presence alone is enough to make them feel worried and scared. But she could go get lunch wherever she wanted, right? So without her counsel in Ottawa. Ooh, scary. Tamara Lich is unleashed in Ottawa. It's unbelievable. And is she going to get a fair trial? The judge seems pretty good so far, actually. But do I know? No. And am I sure that ultimately when all is said and done, they're going to get a fair trial? It doesn't seem likely. In all honesty, if I'm looking at it objectively. But honestly, the first day so far, the judge seems good. And the defense, or not the defense for Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, but the government Crown prosecutors are terrible. Like they seem to have made a couple of missteps already, and the judge isn't believing them. So here is Patriot Smoothie, and he's live tweeting this. There's a whole bunch of people who are live tweeting this. This is pretty good, and it leaves it it gives a good overview. So here we go. The trial of Chris and Tamara aims to be about 16 days, 10 days for the Crown and 6 for defense. The Crown intends to call 22 witnesses, including the Ottawa Police, OC Transport, Ottawa City Transportation, City of Ottawa, and downtown residents and businesses opposed to the convoy. The judge humorously pointed out that this trial is taking place in the Ontario Court of Justice, not the Superior Court, unlike the CBC suggested. The judge is trying to keep things on track, lots of housekeeping. We're currently on break as counsel is trying to resolve a housekeeping matter. This break has lasted longer than anticipated. I wish I would have gotten up and stretched. We're back in session. I'm ordering a battery pack at this moment. Defense is trying to exclude 9 witnesses from being called, including Zexi Lee. Phone is dead now. Defense wants to alter release conditions for Tamara so she can be downtown Ottawa without counsel during the trial. Sounds like it will be granted. It was, as far as I understand it. And then he says, we're back. The Crown is playing all of these videos of the convoy, and all I'm seeing are beautiful, peaceful Canadians standing up justly for their rights. The Crown is trying extensively to rather suddenly introduce a 1-hour-long videotape for the purpose of 7 carefully selected 30-second-ish clips. Defense argues that they'd want to see the whole thing. Judge seems to want to allow defense time to do it. Crown repeats themselves. Crown only really wants those small segments, clips. Judge, defense seem to agree that the whole video would have to be an exhibit. Defense questions research sources that led to this video. It seems we will have a trial within a trial about the exhibit's admissibility. Crown evidence shows protesters standing around saying things to officers like, don't you know we're Canadian? Some chance of love over fear. Real groundbreaking stuff. 2 source videos are admitted in their entirety as exhibits. Greenspun, who's the defense lawyer, Tamara Lich's lawyer, begins his cross-examination of witness 1, Officer Barlow, spelling, he doesn't know if that's spelled correctly, of the Ottawa Police Service, OPS. I don't know if I'll keep doing play-by-play or big picture updates. If interesting things happen, I'll try and let you know. Officer Barlow created Exhibit 1, the 10-minute video compilation video from the convoy crafted from 5 specific instructions the Crown sent to OPS for video material. In that video, we saw traffic moving freely throughout the protest footprint. That's as bad as it gets. Greenspun referring to the video of the congestion OPS Officer Barlow was tasked with compiling by the Crown. Greenspun is quite a sight to behold. Officer Barlow, when asked about the 7 clips the court has been going back and forth about since coming back from recess, says they're rather unremarkable. Greenspun mentions that at some point in each of the 7 clips, someone shouts, hold the line. Barlow didn't notice this. Greenspun ends by saying the 10-minute compilation didn't have anyone saying hold the line once. Interesting. Why would the Crown want clips with that phrasing so badly they'd make a lunchtime edition of the 7 clips, 2 new exhibits, source videos? Barlow remarks that people said we're not leaving and that majority of the videos had people saying hold the line. The judge appears to disagree, saying he heard things like love over fear. Barber's attorney, Magnus, and he's got that name wrong, but it's Magus, is now cross-examining Officer Barlow about the source of the new exhibits and some context. Magus asks about people hugging in the videos, children playing in the street and bouncy castles, also asks about police violence toward protesters. Why was none of that included? That's a tricky question, Barlow remarks. Looks like we're now going to watch one of the compilation source videos. But first, an afternoon break. And we're back, and Magus is walking the court through sections of the source video showing police striking protesters that the Crown did not include in their compilation. So there's videos that the Crown didn't want people to see, and I've actually got one, so we're going to watch it. It's basically just the video of the officers assaulting the protesters, right? But that's pretty wild. Here's the video, and here's the still. Here's the still of the officer assaulting a protester with a rifle. So there you go, right? Welcome to Canada, where we will beat you with a rifle if you dare to protest peacefully in the Capitol. Paul Mitchell says Freedom Convoys Tamara Lich and Chris Barber not on trial for political beliefs, Crown says. Really? Do they think they believe themselves? Because that's all that's on trial here. It's pretty wild. The Democracy Fund has confirmed with the court that there will be no Zoom link for the trial. So the Democracy Fund is also live tweeting the trial. They're there, and I think they have a vested interest in this. Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms is there too. They say counsel for Chris Barber doesn't want occupied or occupation used in trial. Occupation occurs when a foreign power exercises control over an area outside its territory, taking over administration and governance. That's the 1907 Hague Convention definition. No occupation occurred. No, it didn't occur. Andy Lee says this is about Zexi Lee, and Judy says Greenspan says admission 2 involves attempt by defense to exclude some Ottawa residents from testifying, including Zexi Lee, the young woman who launched a court injunction against the Freedom Convoy protesters. Zexi Lee, right? Oh man. Andy Lee says, stop calling her an Ottawa resident. She's a paid federal public servant that's a co-chair of the Senate of Senator Wu's ACCT Leaders Summit, a taxpayer-funded entity which offers subsidies and also helped organize a recent protest against a foreign agent registry. She's also a liar. So yes, she is. Here's Andrew Lawton responding to Trish Wood's tweet, and she says, I like the judge. He's reasonable and not grandstanding. The Crown forbids Tamara from being in the downtown core or the red zone without her legal counsel. She had to get a special dispensation to go for lunch today without counsel. We heard earlier her presence might trigger the locals. Seriously. Yep. And Andrew Lawton's responding to this. He says, Tamara Lich needs special permission to get a sandwich without her lawyer present. Ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It really is. And here is the still shot of the police assaulting the protester. And here is the video of the same, just in case we want to watch it. Here we go. So these people are violently putting down a protest and calling it an occupation when that definition does not apply. Anita Anand was asked a question, but I don't want to worry about what she said. I'm interested in Lametti after her. So here is what Lametti said during the POEC, the Rouleau debacle. Here we go.
Minister Lametti's voice in the background, that there was a TV. I heard my name mentioned, but I was trying to prepare for these questions.
I felt personally threatened when you walked through the convoy and saw some of the banners, saw the Prime Minister hanging off the end of a rope, for example, violent images, and you saw some of the rhetoric that was coming out from the protesters. I shouldn't say protesters because it wasn't legitimate protest. The occupiers, and when you saw what the occupiers were doing to my staff, and the experiences that they were coming in with, at one point I said, I'm going to Montreal. We're going virtual because I didn't want to put my staff at risk to have to come into work.
Occupiers, but there wasn't an occupation. He just casually decided these weren't protesters. It wasn't a legitimate protest. They're occupiers. But there was a judge who said they're allowed to continue their legal protest. A judge called it a legal protest. And then Lametti dropped the emergency act, blah, blah, blah. Unbelievable, right? And he's reimagining history in order to align with the narrative he's been told to propagate, right? Here is Tamara Lich's lawyer, Greenspan. He has argued in court this morning that the convoy was not an occupation, and here is his explanation of that.
We argued it in court, and I think it's a word that should be reserved for occupations, and particularly at this time when there are Ukrainians under real occupation. It's an insult to them and anybody else who's survived an occupation to be calling what happened here in Ottawa an occupation.
You think this is...
Well, I mean, what's happening in Ottawa right now, I mean, it may qualify as an occupation. Who's in charge of our Parliament building right now? Is it the Canadian people or the representatives of the Canadian people, or is it WEF, United Nations communists, Chinese communists? I really don't know who our government works for, but it seems like it's not us. Between Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, Chrystia Freeland being young global leaders, Chrystia Freeland being a chairperson on the WEF, all of those conflict of interest, plus the news about China, plus the alleged news about Russia's influence and interference in our election campaigns, et cetera, et cetera. I can't believe that what's going on in Ottawa is our government acting on our behalf for our best interest. It doesn't seem like that. It seems like an occupying government that's trying to put down a protest that embarrassed the hell out of them and almost made them lose their power. Part of that, and part of what this is, in my opinion, is a group of people who understand that their hold on power depends on them silencing their critics and manipulating the reality of the world, the narrative, I call it a lot, but the reality of the world to fit their narrative. And if they lose control of that, if people say that man can't be a woman to a degree where their point is watered down and they don't have power anymore, then they lose power, and they don't want that. So they're holding on to their power. But it seems like the more they hold on to their power, the more ridiculous they look and the less people believe it. So I don't know if we're in a cycle of them losing power at this point in time, but they're incentivized to do anything and everything possible to maintain power. Okay. And I think that stealing the 2020 election is part of that for Joe Biden, and maintaining a president that is going to continue the status quo rather than a president like Donald Trump, who will not. Right. And so all of that, and if they could have that kind of influence in Canada, they being China or the WEF or both, right, they would. I think they would act in their own best interest. Why wouldn't they? People do that, right? And so, especially when whole populations are asleep at the wheel. And I think the United States and Canada has been politically asleep at the wheel for decades at least. Julian Assange tried to warn us, right? And now he's in prison for showing us collateral murder, where they took out a whole bunch of reporters who were going to report on the malfeasance in the Iraq and all sorts of things that they were doing. Or was it Iraq or Afghanistan? I think it was Iraq. But regardless of all of that, fundamentally, we have a situation where I'm not totally convinced that what's happening in Ottawa isn't an occupation, but I'm not talking about the Freedom Convoy. Let's talk about jokes, because at the end of this clip, and I'll show this Lametti clip again, I wanted to, he says, they're talking about the tank thing. And at the end of this clip, he says, no, the tank thing was just a joke. Okay. But do you remember when Hillary Clinton asked about Julian Assange, can't we just drone this guy? Here's WikiLeaks, right? Oh, WikiLeaks. 2016 seemed like innocent times compared to now, doesn't it? And they say, Hillary Clinton on Assange, can't we just drone this guy? And I tried to find a clip of that. I thought there was a clip, but there isn't. There's a clip of her saying, we came, we saw, he died. And I'm going to show that to you in just a minute. But this is the cable, I guess, that WikiLeaks released that has a quoted Hillary Clinton saying, can't we just drone this guy? Clinton openly inquired, offering a simple remedy to silence Assange and smother WikiLeaks via a planned military drone strike. I mean, is that a flex? Hillary Clinton was so mad at me, and not me personally, like Julian Assange, that they thought about using a drone to take me out. Is that a flex, or is that like, ooh, I don't know, man. Okay, here's Lametti joking about bringing tanks in to deal with the Freedom Convoy. I'm just going to fast forward it a bit because it's very close to the end. Okay, here it is. Maybe it wasn't as close to the end as I thought. Here we go.
And I'm often alone, and I would have been vulnerable.
You'll recall that Mr. Cameron asked you about your first sentence there, you need to get the police to move. The exchange goes on to talk, you say, and the CAF if necessary. Mr. Mendicino writes, how many tanks are you asking for? I just want to ask Anita how many we've got on hand. You respond, I reckon one will do. On February 2nd, or at any other point, were you seriously suggesting that CAF be brought in, or that there be tanks brought in to Ottawa to deal with the situation?
No. This exchange is meant to be a joke between two friends.
Ha 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 ha. Can't we just drone the guy? Ha 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 ha. Right? No, it's not a joke, right? You actually held the power to do that. So if you say to somebody, can't we just drone the guy? They say, ma'am, are you serious? Like we droned, what's his face the other day? You know, like we've got 3 drone strikes scheduled for tomorrow. Should I add this one? When you hold that kind of power, CAF is Canadian Armed Forces. When you hold that kind of power, you shouldn't make jokes about tanks, right? When you hold that kind of power and you make a joke like this about Gaddafi.
So, I mean, that is the land of unconfirmed.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
Did it have anything to do with your visit?
No.
Right? Like if I don't laugh, is she going to drone me? Right? Please clap. It's one of those things, right? And then here is a whole 5 minutes. So I was looking for the "can't we just drone him" video, and you would assume the same kind of affect, right? We came, we saw, he died, ha 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 ha, and everybody in the room laughs. Can't we just drone him? Ha 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 ha. I hope she doesn't say that about me sometime when I'm not in the room. Right? And now they've done this 5-minute clip talking about, don't you think that's inappropriate? And Clinton responds to this. I don't know that we need to hear it because she says, no, it wasn't inappropriate. I was just joking, blah, blah, blah. Ridiculous stuff. People with power to actually execute using the military against citizens shouldn't joke about that kind of thing, especially when they're the attorney general of the country, right? Like the attorney general and all of that, cabinet minister, blah, blah, blah. Like that's a very powerful position to be joking about wielding tanks on people who are, you claim are not legitimate protesters. How come Lametti can make that statement? Is he speaking as the attorney general? Is he speaking as the legal representative that he's supposed to be? Has he then looked into all of the facts? Because it doesn't seem like he has. It's ridiculous. It's unbelievable. I don't think this trial, just like the Rouleau report and the Johnston circus, I don't think this is going to yield anything that people who want consequences and accountability are going to be happy with. I don't think people are I mean, Tamara and Chris Barber may get off and not have any kind of legal consequences. The judge may say, you guys are crazy. This lawsuit is null and void for whatever reason. He may reject it. And I don't think that fundamentally Chris and Tamara did anything wrong. And certainly not to warrant like this level of trial or anything like that. But I think that, even if they don't have any criminal charges or anything like that, I don't think the things that have been done to them will be made whole. I don't think the Canadian government's going to say, real sorry about that. Like here's some compensation for the time you spent in prison. Here's some compensation for the way we ruined your reputation. Here's some compensation for all of the terrible things we've forced you to endure since this whole thing happened. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think anybody's prioritizing doing that. And so I think it's going to be a hollow victory if there is a victory indeed. And if there isn't, people, and if they do jail time, and they're trying to make political prisoners out of the January 6th people, then I would not be surprised if they did that. Like I would not be surprised if they said, we know that the maximum sentence for this is 10 years. And we know that you've spent X number of days in, and so on and so forth. You get 3 times the time you spend in if you're in pretrial rather than doing your time after. So you're incentivized to just wait it out in prison, because the time you spend in prison, sometimes your sentence is done by the time you finish the trial because of the 3-time rule, like the 3 days per 1 day you spend. So I think it's 3 anyways. And so it's very interesting because I don't think these people will be made whole. And even if they get out of it, and if they say, well, this 10 years is the minimum, they'll say, because you guys, this is what the judge in the Proud Boys thing did, because you're terrorists, 10 more years. Like 10 years for the crime and 10 years for being a terrorist while doing that crime. You terrorist, you. So it seems not good. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful